Hi everyone, it's Jan from Jan Plans Things. Welcome to my Plan With Me video for this week. Hermione has finally decided to come sit on my journal while I was trying to fill out the last of the columns. So I thought I'd just let her welcome you all this week. You might have noticed what I did then was I skipped a page because this week I wanted to do an illustration using the Pentel pocket brush pen, and I've noticed in the past that the LT doesn't hold up as well with the Pentel pocket brush pen. It does bleed through a little bit due to the ink. So I have skipped a page just in case, as I didn't really want to ruin the page beforehand, and I'm just going to use it for random notes throughout the week. So I actually struggled a lot to think of what to draw this week. I mean, I did mention previously that I wanted to do natives, Australian natives, and I just did a quick Wikipedia, and the Proteas that I've kind of drawn this week are not native. I didn't know that. They're always in the native flower for the flower sets. I do love drawing these flowers though, because I reckon they're really excellent as a starting flower to practice watercolor. So obviously whenever I have a little bit of a brain death in terms of creativity, I resort to my old faithful of drawing cats. So this week I have a tiny kitty sitting inside the middle of my flower, and I'm actually really pleased with how it turned out. I mean, I think I always am pleased when there's a cat in the spread. It just makes me happier, I reckon. So the idea this week was that I have a cat in the center sitting in the flowers, and it's kind of just like a random assortment of flowers in the middle, and I've got the date bubbles kind of casually put around. I do like using the Pentel pocket brush pen because it gives a lovely variation in the line, and there's a lot less work that you need to do. The only thing you have to be aware of is that the nib is super duper sensitive, so you have to practice before you put it to paper. In the past, when I used the when I used the Archer and Olive, I could use this pen without any problem at all, and it wouldn't really bleed through the paper, but with the LT I like to take that extra precaution. That being said, a lot of the spreads that I've done, like for example my Ghibli spreads, use this pen, and I didn't really care about it going on to the next page. It was just that I had a couple of extra notes that I had to be aware of for this week, so I didn't want any of that to be crossed out. So amongst the flowers in the center, I've also got a few flying petals and little bubbles as well, because I feel like it adds a little bit of interest to the page. I'm using the Sakura Micron just to do like really quick scribbles and to add the date bubbles in. So I'm just putting them in first just to see how compositionally they look. I did kind of sketch out with pencil first, but I kind of committed to them straight away, so that's okay. I did want the one slightly off center, the one in the bubbles in the middle, mainly because I was worried if I moved it symmetrically, it would end up on Humphrey's face, and he's kind of like the star of this spread, so I didn't want a date ball on the spread, on his face that is, so I was happy just to move it off to the side, and I don't really mind the lack of symmetry on that later on. This is what happens if you kind of just draw everything on the fly. Now this week sees the return of my old faithful Daniel Smith watercolor palette. For those of you who have asked, this is a custom built palette made of brass, so you can't easily buy it, and when you do order one of these by whichever brass palette maker that you're going to, it does take around 6 months to 18 months for them to make one. There's always a huge waiting list on these things, yeah, it's one of my most prized possessions. It is very expensive though, so I got it as a gift after finishing a big project. I'm currently using a custom grey that I mixed using ultramarine blue and yellow ochre to build the base colours of Humphrey. I find that when I'm painting Humphrey in my LT, I tend to give him his stripes because I love the kind of like splotchy effect that the watercolour has on the paper. So I kind of layer it up a little bit, and I just put a little bit more detail in. So his tail stripes are a little bit more pronounced, and you see a little bit of the stripes on the back of his fur. I mean, if you look at Humphrey, he looks completely grey most of the time, but in the light you can see there's a little bit of stripiness underneath all that. So I've kind of also given him a little pink ear as well, because I think that's kind of cute, and pink cheeks. Even though I'm pretty sure that doesn't work that way on cats. I don't think they blush like that, but I think it does look cuter. With the lovely lime green, I'm using a mixing it with the quinacridone gold, which I do believe has been reformulated, but a nice rich yellow would work just as well. Just make sure it's a translucent yellow, not the not like an opaque yellow, because I find that that will kind of destroy the line work underneath it. And I'm just mixing that with a little bit of phthalo green. And I find that mixing it with a majority of the gold gives it a lovely bright lime color. You can buy this color straight out, I think, of some tubes, especially in whole bean. They like make lovely translucent colors like this. But I think that learning how to mix colors is also really important, which is actually how come I started learning to paint using a 12 color set like this. And then I slowly added a few more. But like learning how to tint and tone all your paints with just very little means that you kind of just understand color a little bit more. It's a great little training exercise. So if you're starting out, instead of using your entire palette, maybe just test using 12 or so, and then seeing how you can learn to mix those colors. And then you can get lazy like me. I wanted to mix a kind of like gold and orangey ochre color, and then I remembered that Connie had sent me one in my mushroom set, so that's the Peppercorn Arts on the left. I think if you can mix that, you just use a little bit like of a French red with the golden color as well to get that little tint. I did want some variation in the petals, which is why I decided to do that. I try and also keep the petal quite wet on the page of the LT, so I'm moving quite fast, and then dipping my brush directly into the palette, I can tint the base of the petal just a little bit darker to give the flower a little bit of depth. I think that if you were doing this on watercolor paper, which I do recommend, like this type of flower to paint on watercolor paper is absolute joy to do, and you would just leave the petal as wet as possible at the over the whole length, and then just dab in pigment at the bottom to get that beautiful gradation. You can't really do that exactly the same in the LT because of the way the paper is treated, so you do have to adjust your technique when you're journaling. But I think that if you do want to practice doing that type of gradation, this is an easier flower to learn to paint than, say, a rose or something like that. But yeah, so you try and use the same techniques as much as you can, but obviously depending on the paper you're using, you should be adjusting as you go. I find that whenever I open up my comments to, kind of ask me anything on my Instagram, one of the most common questions I get all the time is, how do you maintain your creativity throughout the weeks in creating the spreads? And I have to say, sometimes you just can't think of anything, and that's okay. You need to kind of give yourself a bit of a break. I mean, it is a little bit tough sometimes to come up with a new idea every week, and I'm actually finding this month's flower theme a little bit difficult because I'm kind of losing myself in the overall theme of flowers. So I found that this week's illustration really kind of brought me back to what I enjoy drawing, because I find that sometimes it's very easy to kind of get lost in the trends and everything of what everyone else is drawing and forgetting what you like to do. So it's always good to take a little bit of a step back and kind of just reevaluate. So apparently what I like to do is cats. But I guess you guys all kind of knew that already. That being said, I really did love last week's spread, but I'm finding that the ones from my monthly setup aren't as poppy as I would like them. But yeah, so that was just something. Like sometimes I just really struggle week to week to think of an idea, and I especially struggle at the start of the month when I'm thinking of a theme. But I think it's okay. It's just part of the experience and just trying to work out what you want. And plus, if worst comes to worst, you can just change it up during the weeks anyway. You don't have to like stress yourself out too much about it. I think it's also quite hard because I'm meant to be creative every day at work as well. So sometimes it's hard to just keep on maintaining that level of thought all the time, and you kind of just need to, I don't know, sit and stroke your cats like a little Dr. Evil in Austin Powers or something. So to the tips of my little petals, I'm adding a little bit of shimmer because obviously I can't help it. I'm mixing actually a little bit of the silver and the platinum gold this time around because I wanted it to catch the light a little bit more, and I was finding that the pure gold that I normally do clashed a little bit. And I'm also using my favorite technique of splotching on some, let's say, indescript blue in a splotchy pattern, so it kind of looks like clouds, and just to kind of ground everything overall. That being said, I wasn't 100% sure if I should have added the blue. I am glad that I did, but the colors are like really strong, but I guess it's kind of the colors that you see in an Australian flower bouquet anyway, that rich red and green and that lovely blue. It's just a color scheme that I don't normally use in my journal, so I was a little bit surprised after I put in, but overall I'm actually pretty happy with the colors the more I kind of sit with it. I am going to use my trusty Tombow Fudenosuke hardtip pen, the one with the blue barrel, to do the lettering this time around. That disappeared for a while because I got lazy. And I'm using the Sakura Micron jelly pen in the 08 in white. And what I'm doing now is I'm just tinting a little bit of the grey as well, and just painting it underneath just to add that little bit of shadow, even though in real life you don't cast a shadow on the sky really, unless you're a giant skyscraper and you're looking up and it's blocking out the sun. Something like this would not block out the sun that much, but I found that it just helps it pop a lot more on the page, which is why I like to do it. Anyway, that is the spread for this week. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll chat to you guys next week. Thanks a lot. Bye!